Hello YouTube, I'm Tallman Brad, and in this video I'm going to show you some quick ways to add mountains to an existing 7 Days to Die map. Let's say you're currently making maps using 7 Days to Die built-in random world generator. You might even be using the improved random world gen mod to get bigger cities. But one of the things that I know a lot of you will be doing is choosing fewer mountains and hills to give the generator more chance of finding space to draw the cities. Now, in my opinion, the problem with this is that it leads to a pretty flat and boring map. So let's look at that now with some very quick methods of adding mountains or hills to your map. I'll be using MapToolz by Zipcore, and I'll be using Gimp for the editing side of things, but you use whatever photo editor you prefer, as long as it can save 16-bit RGB files in the PNG format. If you're not familiar with MapToolz, check out my previous videos for installation instructions, but I will go through how to use it in this video. Incidentally, MapToolz will still work in the Steam Apps Common 7 Days to Die mods folder, but it also works in the new location of App Data Roaming 7 Days to Die and then the mods folder there. Now, this is where all mods will need to be from Alpha 21 onwards, so it's probably worth getting used to that now. So here we are in the game, and let's go into Editing Tools and Random Gen Previewer. So if you want to play along at home, I've given it the world seed of TMB Sept, just my initials, and then the date. World size is 4K. Towns are set to many, wilderness to few. Rivers, craters, cracks, and lakes are all turned off. Now, to get a higher chance of getting larger cities, you'd remove mountains at this stage and probably reduce your hills quite a bit as well. And you want more plains because this tends to be where cities will actually spawn. And I've switched off wasteland just so I don't have to deal with the noise. So the name of the map that I've been given here is Thomsolo Valley, and we'll generate that. So looking at the map, I can already see we've got some decent sized cities there. It's only a 4K map. I'm not expecting a great deal. And we've also got some useless areas, basically, that just aren't doing anything that we've got no reason to go into. And look at this giant space here. Now, personally, I think that's crying out for a nice big mountain. Probably over here, probably something up there, maybe even down there as well. So let's look at doing that. Now, once it's done, start a quick game up on the new map, as we need to run the map at least once for 7 Days to Die to finish generating all of the files that we'll be using. You can just quit out of the game, and you can even delete the save if you want to, because we won't be going back to that version. So from the debug menu, which is F1, you need to type map export. So let me put in F1, type in map export, and hit enter. And that gives us a list of all of the worlds that we have available to us. And I'm looking for the new one. There it is, Thomsolo Valley. It's number 2. So I'm going to use the up arrow on the keyboard instead of typing map export again. I'm going to put a space in and then the number 2 and hit enter. And we'll give it a moment and it will just generate a folder called workspace for us. That's done. I'm just going to hit the Windows key on my keyboard and bring up the File Explorer. So now from File Manager, I'm going to go to %appdata%, hit enter, into 7 Days to Die, into Generated Worlds, and there's our new world, Thomsolo Valley. If we open that up, we can see there are all the files that have been created by 7 Days to Die, and at the top there we've got Workspace, which we've just created using the map export function. So inside of that, there are the files that we can actually start editing now. But there are some missing. So before we start editing anything here, we need to go back into 7 Days to Die and into the F1 menu and type in map convert, a space, and the number of our world. Now, once we've hit enter, MapToolz will then create an additional folder called preview. Now, normally the map convert command is used to recreate our world after we've made changes, but the preview folder contains some files, or images at least, that will help us while we edit our map. Now, don't panic if it looks like your computer has frozen. It does take quite a few minutes just for this process to complete. But once it's done, it will let us know. There we go, with that message there. The map is now ready for usage with new games, etc. That's great. So now on to editing the map. So we're back on the desktop and we're inside of Thomsolo Valley folder. And in that, we're in Workspace. And you'll notice in there that we have this folder called Preview, which we wouldn't have had we not ran that map convert option. So let's have a look in Preview. Now, I need to point out that the files that are inside of Preview shouldn't be used for editing. Really, they're just there as a sort of a guide. I mean, literally, as the name suggests, they are just a preview of what you're going to get on your map. But they are very useful when it comes to map editing. So let's make a start with that. We'll go into Workspace. And in Workspace, there is our height map, the DTM PNG file. I'm going to right-click on it and say Open with Gimp. I'm going to use Control and mouse wheel just to zoom out a little bit so you can see the whole thing. And the first thing I need to do before I go anywhere else is go up to Image and Precision and change it from 8-bit to 16-bit. Now, it should be 16-bit. I'm not really sure why it's saying it's 8-bit. We'll say Convert. And that just means that any changes we make to this will be at a 16-bit resolution instead of the lower 8-bit. So now from the menu at the bottom, I'm going to open up the Workspace folder again and then go into Preview. And this is where these files become very useful. Preview POI.png is the one I'm after. So I'm going to grab a hold of that, but I'm going to drag it down into this layers area in GIMP and let go. Now that'll create a new layer in our image, and we can't see it at the moment because it's at the bottom. I can just grab a hold of it, pull it to the top, and there we go. So from that, you can see there's our height map, and we get an idea of roughly where our POIs are, so we know where we can put the mountains. So the next thing I want to do is create a new layer. So I'm going to right-click in this layer section here, say New Layer. And it's already got the name in from when I was doing the test run. So it's called Mountain Layer. It's filled with a transparency. I'm just going to say OK. And it's conveniently put it to the top. Now, if yours is at the bottom or somewhere else, you can grab a hold of it and put it to the top. Now, the reason I've done this is because I want to draw my mountains on a separate layer to the original height map, just so it makes it easier to fix any mistakes or do something else, which is very useful, and I'm going to show you in just a moment. But let's get started by creating some mountains. We'll have a first one up here, I think, and if we have a quick check of the preview, we can see that area there, roughly in the middle and to the right, is going to be desert. So we'll go with a sort of a desert-themed mountain style. So I've zoomed in with the control button on the mouse wheel to pick the area that I want to work in. And a useful little tip for you is to pan your picture around instead of using these sliders here, which is very awkward. In Photoshop, you can hold down the space bar and move it, but it doesn't always work in GIMP. It does sometimes, depending on what tool you're on. But what does work is holding down your middle mouse wheel and then dragging it. So now we're ready to start editing. And in this video, we're focusing on adding mountains, but you can use the steps that we've just gone through to make any other changes to maps, like adding rivers or changing the coastline or making islands and so on. So I've shown you in previous videos how to use the basic brushes in GIMP to draw, smudge or erase on the map. But here I'm going to use a different brush that gives us a more organic shape for terrain. It's this one here. It's called Acrylic 01. And I'm sure in your photo editing software you'll have something very similar. And let's just have a look at what exactly this brush does. I'm going to make sure my hardness is at full, my force is full, and rate and flow are all on full so I can see the complete thing. Make sure I've got a white color, and if you haven't, you can reset your foreground, background colors and swap them with those two buttons there. Make it nice and big, and I'm just going to click once and you'll get an idea of what it's going to do. Now, obviously, this would be horrendous in a map. It would just be straight up to the ceiling of the game, but it gives us an idea of the actual shapes that it's going to create. Now, you can see there that it's got a sort of a feathered edge, if you like. That's going to taper off, but it's also got this really nice jaggedy sort of texture around the edges. Now, if I zoom out and we just try dropping the hardness down a little bit and we click again, there we go. You can see you're getting a slightly softer transition to the sides there. Maybe not as much as that. That looks a bit better. So I'm going to stick with that. Okay, Control Z just to undo those. And how are we going to do this mountain? Well, the first thing we need to know is roughly the starting height of the terrain. Now, because this is a desert, I'm going to go for a sort of a tiered mountain effect like the ones you'd see in Monument Valley. So let's start by pulling up the color palette. We'll change over to the 255 scale. Makes more sense to us in 7 Days to Die. And I want to pick this color to find out what it is. So I'll use the eyedropper. There we go. So I can see that that's a shade of 36. So the basic terrain height there is 36. So I'm going to start my first layer at 46. Now, rather than typing in manually the numbers in each one of those, which I have done for ages, there's a little slider here you can just grab and pull along. And that will do them all at the same time, or you can get it slightly more accurate by using the up and down. 45.1 will do. Doesn't matter that much. And if I just do a click with that, you can see there it's painted down that shade. Let's have a little zoom in. And I can also see already that it has got a nice little blend off the sides there, so it won't be sharp edges to it. So I'm just going to use this brush tool to paint the basic shape of the mountain, but something that I want to check first is this spacing option. Now, the spacing function here, if I have that set to 1, that means that every pixel, it will draw another one of these shapes. But if I have it set to whatever it was on there, 25 or something, it will draw another one of these shapes every 25 pixels. So that's what I'm going to use. I'll stick to 25, and I'm going to continue this shape round. And you'll see there, it's just plonking one down every now and then, which means that we get that nice border around the edges as opposed to a blurred edge as it's being dragged around. So we've made a flat area, which is roughly 45. So that's, what's that, 9 above the terrain level. So there'll be a little climb and then there'll be a flat area. But what we can do next is do another one, and then we'll get that desert effect starting to go on that I'm looking for. So if I increase this one a little bit more, to 50, that will do. And I'll just draw inside of there. I'm going to leave that bit at the front. I quite like the idea of having a lip there. Same again, I'll just increase that a little bit more. And I want to draw in there, but my brush is getting a little bit too big, so let's reduce the size of that. Not that much. There we go. And do the same again. Like that. And now I'm going to break away and have this as 2 peaks. So this next one, we'll make this higher. Slightly smaller brush. We'll have a little peaked area there. And a larger peak here. A couple of peaks in there. You know, I'm quite excited to see how that looks in the game, but I know roughly already how it's going to look because I've obviously been through this a couple of times before. And these areas will look very flat because they are all just one solid color. So what I want to do is add a little bit of texture to this before we go any further. And I'm going to use another tool for that, which is particularly useful, and you'll see why in just a second. Now, mine's already selected there, but yours might be the smudge or this blur and sharpen tool. But either way, if you just find one of those tools and right-click on it and change to Dodge and Burn, what this tool will do is it will either raise or lower the brightness of whatever is underneath it. I pick a different brush. I want to use this one here. It's got more sort of separated dots on it. I'm going to make it bigger so you can see what I'm talking about. So with that tool selected, I'm just going to click in an area here without changing any of the other settings, just to show you exactly what this is doing. In fact, I'll overlap these two here. Click once there, and let's have a closer look at what's happened. So you can see the dots, which are the shape of the brush that we've used. But if you notice that this one here is this shade, but as it goes down, it's darker. Now, what it's doing is it's raising or lowering, in this case, the brightness of the color that you're hovering over. So this is a good example. Just here, you can see exactly where it transitions from this shade to this shade, where it's overlapped. It's slightly darker there. So it doesn't make all of these dots exactly the same shade. It's relative to the color that's underneath it. So this is quite a useful thing. Now that doesn't look very good, and that's too severe. So let me undo that. Go back to the tool. I'm going to change the force. Going to lower that down. We'll just have a quick test. It's still way too much. Drop it down. Undo what I've done. Click it again. There we go. Now that's quite subtle, but that will be noticeable on the map. So I'm happy with that. So what I'll do is I'll just dot round the map in a couple of places. And that will add a few divots to the ground, which is quite nice. But if we want to raise an area, we can use this same tool. But down the bottom here, I'm on burn at the moment. If I go to dodge, it reverses the effect and will make slightly lighter areas. So let's test that as well, just on this edge here. So let's say we're happy with the changes that we've made there and we want to export this and test it out in the game. What's the quickest way of doing that? Well, the first thing we need to do is to turn off the preview POI layer. And then from here, we're going to go into the file menu. And in GIMP, you have this option to overwrite the original file that you're working on. So I could just do that, but there's something else I want to show you very quickly. If I go back to my folder where the workspace folder where the original file is, I'm just going to do a right mouse drag and let go and say copy here. So I've made a copy of my original just in case things go terribly wrong. Let's go back into GIMP and use that file overwrite. There we are, that's done. So I'm just going to minimize this because I'm going to be coming back here in a moment. So we'll go back into Steam and start the game back up. Then from here, we'll need to convert our new height map into a format that the game will read. So I'm going to go to F1, type in map convert, and I remember it was number 2, hit enter, and then wait for a few minutes while it converts everything. And there we go, that's done. So let's close that down, and I'm going to start a new game. I'm just going to change that to a 2 and hit start. So I'm heading up north on the map, and there we go. I can already see the mountain range that we've made. It's certainly more interesting than the flat land that we had earlier on. So you can see there, these little lumpy bits are because of the edges to the brush that we used. And a few little lumps as well, where we used the dodge and burn tool. So down at a sort of a game height, you can see there that it's made the terrain a lot more realistic instead of just a flat area. Well, I think that's very effective and it's quite fitting for the desert. So if you've seen all you need to, please hit the like button before you go. But there is more that I'd like to show you back in the map editor. So let's quit out of here. So we're back in GIMP, and I mentioned earlier that I wanted to put these mountains on a separate layer because it does make it easier to fix any mistakes that you've made. But the other reason for this is that it also makes it easier to duplicate things that you've already got on the map. So for example, I've spent the time drawing that mountain. Why not just copy and paste it in other places on the map? And by having it on a separate layer, it makes that very easy to do. So let me grab the lasso tool, make sure I'm on the mountain layer, and I'm just going to very quickly draw a circle around the one that we created there. Click the button. Then I'm going to do Control-C and Control-V. You can see there that it's created a more active marching ants line around the side there. We've also got this floating selection. So what it's done is it's just duplicated that mountain and then pasted it on top of the other one, but it isn't embedded on that layer yet. So we can actually grab a hold of it if I change to the Move tool, and we can move it somewhere else. Like for example, this space here that needs something in it. Here we go. Let's zoom in. But it's the wrong way around. It's overlapping things. So let's rotate it. And we can do that with this tool just here. Now, depending on what you previously used, it could be something else. Mine's actually on the rotate tool. But if you right click on it, you can see the options that you've got. Now, I do want to rotate it. So we'll select that option. And then just anywhere inside of here, I can grab a hold of it and turn it around the way I want it. There we go. If I'm happy with that, I can say rotate. That's it done. And I can still use the Move tool to get it exactly where I want it. But then if I wanted to, I could also right click on that same tool and choose Scale. And then I can grab a hold of it and drag it like that to scale it down. If I'm happy, hit the Scale button. Back to the Move tool, grab a hold of it, put it back into position. Because we did Control-C to copy that, we've still got that in the clipboard. So if I do Control-V now, I'm going to drop down another copy of that mountain. So guess what I can do? Just grab a hold of that, put that somewhere else, grab the Rotate tool, flip it around the way I want it, say Rotate if I'm happy, grab the Move tool, put it into position. Okay, I'm happy with the changes I've made there. So let's anchor those layers. Turn off the preview, and then we'll export this file over the top of the other DTM. So the same system as before. So I'm back in the game, but because I've made changes to the height map, I need to use the map convert option again to get it to regenerate the map. So let's do F1, map convert, space 2, hit enter and wait just a few minutes. So that's finished running. So let's start a new game with that map and we'll check it out. Okay, let's see if we can find our new mountain. Now I get asked in almost every video, how do you do the skip forwards thing? This thing. Well, it's pretty straightforward, as long as obviously you've got DM mode switched on. So F1 and then DM, enter, and you are flying, so that's H to start flying. When you're flying forwards, holding W. If you also hold down Shift, you go a little bit faster, but if you tap Q, and it skips you forward, so that's the Q key. There we go. So there would have been nothing there had we not just painted our own mountains. Well, if you found this useful, I would really appreciate a like, and please feel free to add any comments or suggestions, maybe as to what are the sort of things you'd like to see in a tutorial. There's a new feature in MapToolz that allows you to draw water at different heights on your map or remove water completely from certain areas. Are you interested in a tutorial on that? Let me know in the comments and I'll see what I can do. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.